How's it going, everyone? It's Tommy from Mars Switch 1000. Today is December 14th, 2020, and obviously the main focus of this video will be the potentially historic nor'easter that could bring historic snowfall totals all throughout the northeast, and we'll also talk about the snowstorm that's going to happen in the very near future within the next day. But before I begin, make sure to subscribe for more content, for more weather-related content, and make sure to turn on post notifications so you get to see more weather related content from me and more weather forecasts and up to date weather forecasts. So let's first begin by taking a look at the GFS model at this point, where you see that the GFS model over the past several days has barely changed, only minuscule changes for the most part. So for the most part, it is guaranteed that we will see a major snowstorm in the United States. Yesterday I said it was likely. Now I think it's inevitable at this point because there's just been too much agreement with the computer models that there will be a major snowstorm just off the East Coast, and it will bring potentially historic snowfall totals all across the East Coast. So it's pretty much guaranteed at this point. Northeast should prepare now if you could, because um, the snowstorm will come within the next only about 2 days from now, where Wednesday it begins, and then it all through Wednesday night is going to be the worst for a lot of you guys in the Northeast. So here, so you see, taking a look at the GFS model, this is where the storm is right now. It's pretty much just a whole disorganized area of showers. Let me switch to this because it shows the isobars, and the isobars give a good idea of the temperature. For example, the 540 millibar line is approximately freezing. So keep that in mind when looking at this map, and you see that for the most part there it's just a disorganized, scattered, widely scattered snow showers throughout the Rocky Mountain ranges. Very weak low pressure system. However, the thing it's packing behind it is, like I said in previous videos, a lot of cold air that's going to be behind it, and that'll be the trigger to really get this storm going and to really develop a low pressure system further southward. And simultaneously there will be a little bit of a dip from that will um there will be a little bit of an Arctic plunge, an Arctic dip from this Canadian high that's going to be to the north of it, and it'll enhance the instability and the convection and the development of this low pressure system, because not only is this low pressure system feeding off the cold air that's trying to filter in to that warm humid air, which is allowing condensation. It's also dealing with the instability and the cold air from the north of it. So pretty much on both sides of the storm, it's going to deal with a lot of instability that will create convection and really rapidly intensify this storm as it moves up the east coast. As you could see, a low pressure forms just off the coast of the Carolinas, and as that cold air attempts to move into the lower pressure, it's going to move over the very warm Gulf Stream waters, and that'll just create a ton of convection, and it'll also increase the winds within the center of circulation. So watch out for that, because winds could also be a problem. I don't expect it to be necessarily a major wind threat. However, the winds will be gusty, especially along the coast, where you could see wind gusts in excess of 50 miles per hour along the coast, maybe 60 in some areas. So you want to keep that in mind. And also, obviously, the oceans will be rough as a result of the strong winds. And you see that this storm since this storm is under very unstable conditions from this Canadian high that's trying to push that cold air into the much warmer Gulf Stream air, which is right above the warm Gulf Stream water. It's just going to create a lot of convection and just a lot of circulating around low pressure system, where the cold air is going to attempt to fill into that less dense, warmer Gulf Stream air. And as it does so, it forces that air up and it condenses. And as the cold air attempts to fill in, it warms up as well. And then the cycle continues, and then which creates just a very strong northeast storm that's expected to dump feet of snow now. So this isn't some minor or small snowstorm that'll only dump maybe 3 to 5 inches. We're talking about feet in this scenario, and that's not every day you see that in the Northeast. Like, for example, New Jersey, New York, it's very rare a lot of the times during the winter that you get a snowstorm where you receive over a foot of snow, because the record snowfall in New York City was around 27 inches, and I think that was broken by Winter Storm Jonas. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but I'm pretty sure Winter Storm Jonas back in 2016 broke the record for most snowfall in within 24 hours or within a snowstorm in New York City. And 27 inches isn't very far from over a foot of snow. So when we're talking about in excess of 12 to 24 inches of snow, that's reaching almost record breaking territory in some areas. And I think some records may be broken in localized areas where you could receive 2 feet of snow. I definitely wouldn't rule it out for a powerful storm like this. And it seems likely we will be talking about feet of snow come Wednesday, because both, like I said, both the GFS and the European model just been leaning towards just bringing a pretty strong storm off the coast. And while yeah, it isn't extremely strong, it's still like 1,004 millibars, and the GFS is at 998. And we've seen nor'easters stronger than that, definitely along the northeast. However, the one thing that the European and GFS model been agreeing on is that there's definitely going to be a lot of precipitation with this, and it's going to be very moisture packed, even though it isn't very strong, because it's just going to deal with a lot of unstable air. And 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 this storm will rapidly intensify. However, since it already started pretty weak, it won't be as strong as, let's say, an average low pressure in the southeast would be. However, it still will be strong enough to dump feet of snow throughout the northeast, and that's definitely something to keep in mind. So, in terms of the track of this, while I do believe that for the most part we won't see any major shifts in the forecast, like there's pretty much no chance that this just stays out to sea and doesn't affect much of anybody, or this goes so far west where only the interior northeast regions are affected. However, I still think that there's a big, I wouldn't say a big, but a mildly big margin of error which could make or break the snowstorm impacts for a lot of you guys, especially if you're around I-95 corridor. For the most part, the European and GFS model have been agreeing that we're going to see mainly snow in New York City, Boston, Philadelphia, etc. But I still wouldn't rule out that chance that maybe this low pressure system moves just far enough to the west where New York City and Boston may get some mixing in the rain, or might be in the rain a lot more than we think, which would definitely limit the snowfall potential in the big cities. However, I don't expect this to be, it's unlikely that this will be a full on rain event for New York City or Philadelphia or Boston, because the thing is with this snowstorm is that this snowstorm, it's expected to move north, and then it's going to take a track more straight towards west after. It's not like other low pressure systems which move up the east coast move generally up north, bringing a lot of that warm southerly air from the south behind it. It's going to move towards the west, more in a westerly direction after it comes close to the east coast, which will mainly keep a lot of the warm air that's just to the south of it, pretty much just to the south of New York City and Philadelphia, because this storm isn't going to go up here and bring the warmer humid air by the southern side of this storm. It's going to move in a westerly direction, so the warm southern side will miss out on New York City, Philadelphia, and Boston. So I don't think this will at all be a full-on rain event for you guys. It's still unlikely that we're going to see mixing of rain. However, I just want to bring up that possibility up, that if this forecast shifts a little bit more to the west, and then we could see more rain than you think in Philadelphia and New York City, which could limit the snowfall potential. And for some of you, that could be good news if you don't like the snow. However, I do expect there will be at least some sort of accumulating snowfall in those cities, because this storm won't move directly north. It's going to move towards the east. I meant to say east. I keep saying this direction's west, but it's east. So because this storm will move east rather than north, so the south warm side of the storm will miss out on New York City, which means that it's unlikely that this will be an all rain event for the coastal cities no matter what, because as the storm moves east, you're gonna there's gonna be, obviously the western side of the storm is always the cooler part. So as this moves east, the New York City, Philadelphia, and Boston will experience the cooler backside of this storm, which will mean you will experience accumulating snowfall because of that. And however, I still think it's more likely than not we're gonna see more of a snow event, an all snow event in New York City, Philadelphia, Boston, and primarily the I-95 corridor. However, again, any shifts in the forecast can make a huge difference, especially if you're just to the southeast of the I-95 corridor, where it's going to be one of those tough forecasting situations, because the cutoff point between a foot of snow and no snow at all is very small, um and any variations and any small differences in the forecast within only a couple miles can make a huge difference in how much snow you experience. So it's definitely something we need to watch over the next several days. The forecast models need to narrow down where exactly the storm goes. However, generally, for the most part, it's being agreed upon that it'll move through this up trajectory, and it's unlikely to do anything weird like stay completely out to sea or move all the way to the west and mainly be an interior northeast threat and affect more of Ohio. So it seems like it's going to move in generally through this trajectory for the most part, and be a major snow event for a lot of you guys. So how major? Well, I made sort of an updated forecast map from yesterday with a different map and slightly different alterations in the forecast. And as you can see, there isn't very much changes I made with this. I still expect a very large area extending from Boston all the way to potentially Washington, D.C., of 12 to 24 inches, 1 to 2 feet. And this affects millions of people, pretty much the biggest population within such a small area in the United States, because if you include Boston, New York City, Philadelphia, Washington D.C., and Baltimore, that's just millions of people within the path of 1 to 2 feet, which is huge. And it's a snowstorm of historic proportions, as I haven't seen such a widespread and huge snowstorm like this probably since Winter Storm Jonas. And that's saying a lot, because Winter Storm Jonas was just historical and affected so many people. And I like to point out, even Winter Storm Jonas didn't affect Boston very much or at all, I don't think. And this storm is expected to do so, potentially bringing up to a foot in Boston, and then 6 to 12 inches throughout middle Pennsylvania, the upper more of upstate New York, and as well as southern Vermont and New Hampshire. So, which is still a significant snowfall event for a lot of you guys if this happens. And then 3 to 6 inches right around Pittsburgh. You're just outside the 6 to 12 inch snowfall forecast. So I would definitely watch out for any sort of shifts in the forecast, because you could be in that scenario if the storm moves far west enough. And just outside of that, 1-3 throughout Ohio and the higher elevations of North Carolina, as this storm is going to mainly stay too far from you guys, or it's going to be too warm, like in North Carolina, to receive much snowfall. And in terms of the cutoff point I was talking about, just it pretty much extends from near Richmond, Virginia, all the way through the coast of New Jersey, pretty much, where any any variations in the forecast within several miles will make a huge difference for you guys. However, I will say prepare because it still could because you still could experience a foot, and it's better to be safe than sorry. Even if it doesn't snow at all, I'd rather be safe and prepared than unprepared for if a foot of snow comes. So I would prepare all throughout the Northeast because it seems like this snowstorm will be historic and will be very historic, and I think it'll break some records throughout the Northeast going into this week. And in terms of the timing of this, I would say the worst will for most people will be Wednesday night, and this storm will move relatively fast. However, that while that might be good news that it'll move fast, because if it moves slower, then we could be talking about 3 to 4 feet of snow, which would be just insane. The thing is that for for faster storms, I don't like faster storms because people tend to underestimate them, especially because they don't regard how fast the snowfall rates fall during fast and impactful storms like this. Because since the storm is moving fast and it's still dumping potentially 1 to 2 feet of snow throughout a large area, that means that snow is gonna drop down fast, and we're gonna see snowfall rates in excess of 2 to 3 inches per hour in some areas, which is just impassable. It's dangerous to be out on the roads, and I want to emphasize this that this snowstorm is definitely not something to play with and go out on unless it's in an extreme emergency, because that snowfall will fall fast, and I want to emphasize that because it could be very dangerous to go on the roads on Wednesday when the storm is at its peak, Wednesday night, I should say, and going into Thursday morning. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. And I want you guys to stay safe during this storm and prepare now because it will be major. Now, outside of this storm, obviously, we've been talking about this smaller storm that could bring up to 3 to 5 inches of snow in some areas in the Northeast. And there's a storm right now. You see that there's just a lot of convection with this storm. There's just a lot of thunderstorm activity. And if I were to show you guys this map without any context, you'd assume that there would be a major snowstorm coming to the Northeast anytime soon based off of how much convection and how powerful this looks. However, somewhat of good news that won't be the case for now, because this isn't the nor'easter I was just talking about. This is a storm before the nor'easter, pretty much just a sneak peek, barely a sneak peek, because it's only gonna dump like 3 inches of snow, but it's still definitely something to watch, especially going into tomorrow. And I would say the Pocono Mountains, where you could receive up to 5 inches of snow. And the reason why it isn't a major snowstorm as the radar suggests is because there just isn't going to be enough cold air that will really change a lot of that rain over the snow. Because you see, there's a lot of snow throughout West Virginia and Pennsylvania. However, it's going to be, for the most part, it's mainly going to be too warm for a lot of snow and for a lot of that rain to transition into snow. However, I would say the eastern portions of Pennsylvania and maybe the northwestern portions of New Jersey could experience the worst of the snow. And this snow even extends to Rhode Island, Massachusetts, and Connecticut. So watch out for that, because it could be a surprise snowstorm for a lot of you if there's just enough cold air. However, in terms of the forecasted snowfall, so let's take a look at how much the GFS model is forecasting. Again, if this is assuming that 1 inch of rain equates to 10 inches of snow, so if we move forward a little bit, you see that for the most part, the GFS isn't taking much snowfall at all. Maybe max 2 inches throughout Pennsylvania, but it isn't much really. And however, in the upper elevations of West Virginia, you could experience up to 10 inches, so watch out for that. But for the most part, it should be minor. But just keep in mind when you're driving tomorrow, because some of the roads could be slick and you don't want to underestimate slick roads like this when they have snow on them, even if it isn't exactly sticking. But yeah, that I guess that's about it for this video. Make sure to prepare in the Northeast because this will be a major snowstorm coming up. And yeah, I hope you guys have a good night, good day. Make sure to subscribe if you like this content. And make sure to turn on post notifications, share with friends and family and all that. And by the way, guys, I want to thank you guys for last video. That last video I made just blew up. I want to thank you guys for all the support you have given me in that video, all the comments, all the likes, all the views. I just want to thank you guys so much, because I never thought a video like like my last video would blow up the way it did. And I'm almost at 300, which is just insane to me. It took me 8 years, but I'm almost at 300. And I just want to thank you guys for all the support, because you guys motivate me to do this. But anyways, guys, I hope you guys have a good night and stay safe.